Good morning. Yesterday I was contemplating the concept of free will, which I often contemplate. These are the things I think about. But Bertrand Russell reckoned that there was no free will. He gave up the idea of free will. He said it was a myth, that all we had was conditioned responses. Culture and tradition cause us to respond in a certain way. These are conditioned responses. So that'd be culture and tradition, which leads to desires, aversions, expectations, fears. That's fears. Aversions is fears. And this is what causes conditioned responses. And this is why he said free will is a myth. And then I met this fellow the other day who was studying philosophy for 8 years, and I asked him, have you any free will? And he says, well, no one has any free will. It's more or less the same thing, that we just respond to stimuli based on culture, tradition, desires, aversions, expectations. But these things, they're basically conditioned responses, and free will is a myth as well. And I said, I see. But this acceptance of no free will, if we allow this to creep in, then we never have free will. But if you get rid of the desires, and I know it's like it's not as easy done as it is to say, oh, get rid of the desires, the aversions, everything else. But this is the purpose of philosophy, is you actually seek to understand, and you actually use the philosophy to change all your values and to understand life. And then you can get rid of these desires, aversions, expectations, fears. And then you can deal with life as is, not as you think it is. And that distinction really has to be made. Like the old me, for example, in the current situation I'm in, would have attacked like a dog, a vicious dog now. That would have been the old me. I would have flew into a rage and all hell would break loose. But when you get rid of what would have caused this was my opinions about the things, and expectations and desires and things like this. But when you get rid of all these, all that's left is pure reason. And yesterday then, like after I ate your man's food and everything else, I seen this thing from Epictetus, and it said, like, no man who's a master of himself can ever be free. If you're not a master of yourself, you can never be free. But then I sort of said, well, I listen to you. Am I free? And I said, yes, I am free, because this is a choice. That really, this is what reason is. That if you want to live in accordance with nature, you have to listen to nature. And this is the distinction between a wave and a particle. If you think you're just a particle, so this is existentialism, that you're just matter, a thing in itself, separate from nature, then you're not going to be listening to nature. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So, for example, for the situation I'm in now, for example, I would say, right, I'm off now, I'm going to leave here now, but it's actually, it's Minerva I listen to, and she says, no, stay. And I said, grand, I'll stay. And what you do is you just, you don't react. You listen, and you say to yourself, right, we'll do this, we'll do that. But this is how people. Nature has its own justice, and this is how people like Marcus Aurelius, Julius Caesar, Augustus, Alexander, they all study philosophy, but they all listen to Minerva, god of wisdom and war. But this is why Napoleon said, like, if you can't look down upon the battlefield with a dry eye, you're going to cost the needless lives of thousands of men, needlessly cost the lives of thousands of men. And that's why, this is what one has to learn to do, learn how to look down on the battlefield with a dry eye. But it's sort of like, like, just say we take modern technology, like who has the satellite and who all the satellite technology and who can see everything, is sort of like the view from above. Well, they relate commandments to the general, you know what I mean? Move left, move right, attack now, don't attack now. And if the general doesn't listen to them, he's going to be sort of fucked. It's really the only way that the whole thing can work is accept that there's a natural order to things. And as I said to Minerva, I said, well, sure, we have an agreement. I listen to you, and otherwise this can't work. This can't work. So that's free will. It's being able to make this choice. You're not being led by your desires, your aversions, your expectations, your fears. You just listen, and this is why. We watched a video yesterday on the silence of God, but everybody who was portrayed in the video, like, was all videos, films of men saying, "Oh, why have you forsaken me, Maria?" But but it's that their head is full of fears, desires, expectations, opinions about the things, and this is why people, like, this is where they go wrong. Well, I'm not. Yeah, this is where they go wrong. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Yeah, this is where they go wrong, and if you overcome these, all that's left is pure reason. Yeah, and then I'll talk about, while I'm on the subject of culture and tradition. I know a lot of people got engaged this year and this Christmas, over Christmas, and congratulations to them. I mean, like, really, like, if that's their thing. But I remember telling you a story about the man who used to drink a good bit in one of the hostels that I met, and I asked him why he used to drink a good bit, and he told me he went out with a girl for 18 years, and then on a leap year, she asked him to marry her, and I says, yeah, and you said yes, and he says, yeah, I said yes. I said, against your better judgment, and he says, yes, and I says, what did you do that for? And he says, well, sure, she asked, and well, how could I say no? And this comes back again to your inability to say no, to one's inability to say no. And this is what I was thinking about yesterday. I was just thinking, like, not saying everybody's the same, of course, like, everybody can think for themselves, but I was just saying, like, how many girls have the inability to say no in this situation, and how many, like, like Walt Disney has a lot to answer for in this regard. Like, here in the Balkans, I often say about the girls often have princess syndrome, which is ever since they're small, they have an expectation, like, of the wedding day, the prince coming, the Walt Disney thing of the whole story of the princess and the prince, and the prince comes and saves them from a certain life, and they live happily ever after. But a lot of girls are culturally conditioned then to this ideal, and this affects their whole decision making process. But this is why I say, like, that's just one example of where you'd have to contemplate your culture and tradition. But then what happened is, then after she obviously had princess syndrome, because obviously then, when things didn't work out as with her expectations, she tried to change him and make him the prince, the ideal prince, and try to create this reality and try and make it match her expectations, which obviously caused frustration on both sides. And after going out for 18 years, it lasted a year. And then he wrote his whole poem on love, which I read, What's Your Concept of Love? And he gave me this whole poem on love, which really outlined his concept of love. And his concept of love was all about possession and ownership, and this thing of having owned somebody and then lost something that he had. But it was very much about possession, and about I always say nobody owns anybody, and I think that's very important, because when you try to possess something and you try to own something, then you have, this is what I was saying to you yesterday about detachment, that if you try to own nothing, like, if you actually realise that nothing's mine, as I even say yesterday, like you even said yesterday, even this few pound I have in my pocket, this is not mine, because you say how to spend it. Like I said yesterday, he said, hold off on the jacks roll, hold off on the jacks roll. I says, yeah, hold off on the jacks roll. But you know, this is pure reason. This is pure reason. And then you say to yourself, well, why am I holding off on the toilet paper? And then the reason becomes apparent, and you just laugh at it, and you enjoy the whole experience, and you enjoy life as is, without reacting to how you think it should be, how you would like it to be. Do you know what I'm saying? And this is sort of the distinction I was trying to make yesterday between the wave and the particle, that it's either a wave or a particle, but the reality is that it's both, but you can make a conscious choice. This is why I say existentialism is the biggest sin, well, the original sin. And I'm not, well, that's because, like, when you think that you're separate from nature, a thing in and of itself and separate from nature, and then you have all these well, I don't really like the word sin, but then you have the sins of the flesh, the desires, the aversions, the expectations. But if you let go of all these and you realise, like, that you're a part of nature and you cannot be separate from nature. This is why I say freedom is an abstract concept. That you're a part of nature and cannot be separate from nature. Then this is true freedom. And then all that's left then is say to yourself, what do you do with this freedom? Because when you reach this point, you say to yourself, well, now that I'm free and I'm in a position to make my own choices, and I'm not influenced by desires, aversions, expectations, and so on, what will I do with this freedom? And all that's left then is your duty to nature. And in order to do your duty to nature, you have to listen. You have to listen, and you have to get rid of the fears. So basically, like, you know, if Minerva or the universe says come here, then I come here. If it says go there, then I go there. But then you sit and you sit and you just say to yourself, well, why am I here? And you just try and figure out, right, it is as is, but what is it? What is it? And if you sit and you contemplate each conceptual experience, then the reason starts to become apparent. Do you know what I mean? But the fog is lifting. The fog is lifting, you know. And I have to say, this is living right here, right now, and it's a nice way to live. Let's just see how things unfold. But one thing is for sure, that if we don't do this together, it just can't work. You know, it can't work. But this is free will. Being able to choose, I'm going to listen to you. That's free will. And yeah, that's what free will is. To be able to make this choice. I'm going to listen to you, or I'm going to react to how I think it is. Yeah, it takes a little bit of work, but it's worth it. Good morning. I'll head off. Talk to you tomorrow.